Disclaimer.
I died believing in God and woke up in hell.
My name is Darius Antoine Mitchell. I am 41 years old. I died for 11 minutes on December 31st, 2023.
And I'm still shocked till now. Before I begin, please subscribe so more people can hear testimonies like this. For years, I told myself I was doing fine. I had a good job as a marketing executive at a firm in Midtown. I drove a black Audi. I had a condo with a view of the city skyline. People respected me. They asked for my opinion. They invited me to their gatherings. And I went to church sometimes. Christmas, Easter, maybe a funeral or two. I prayed when things got hard, when a deal was about to fall through, when my mother called worried about something. But that was it. That was the extent of my spiritual life. I told myself it was enough. I told myself I was not like those people out there doing terrible things. I was not hurting anyone. I was not stealing. I was not cheating. I was just living. And deep down, I believed I had time. Time to get serious. Time to pray more. Time to open that Bible, sitting on my nightstand, collecting dust. I will do it next year. After this promotion. After this deal closed. After the holidays. After I got settled. Always after. But the truth I refused to face was this. I was drifting, slowly, quietly, and I knew it. I felt it every time I sat in church on Christmas Eve and the pastor talked about surrender. I felt it every time my mother asked me if I was praying. I felt it every time I made a New Year's resolution in my head about getting closer to God, only to forget it by February. I knew I was slipping, but I convinced myself I could fix it later. I convinced myself that God understood, that he knew I was busy, that he would wait. I was wrong. December 31st, 2023, New Year's Eve. I was at a party in Buckhead, one of those high-rise venues with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. The place was packed, music pumping, people are laughing, champagne bottles popping every few minutes. I was there with coworkers, some clients, and a few friends I had not seen in months. Everyone was dressed up. Everyone was celebrating. The energy in the room was electric. Countdowns were already playing on the big screens mounted on the walls. Times Square, London, Sydney. The world was preparing to flip the calendar, to start fresh, to celebrate new beginnings. I stood near the bar, holding a glass of champagne, smiling at a joke someone just told. I checked my watch. 11:47 p.m. 13 minutes until midnight. 13 minutes until the new year. I took a sip of my drink and looked around the room. People were taking selfies. Couples were kissing early. Someone was already wearing a glittery 2024 headband. The DJ announced that the countdown would start in 10 minutes. The crowd cheered, and that is when it happened. A sharp pain shot through my chest. Not a dull ache. Not discomfort. Pain. Suddenly. Violent. Like something inside me had been crushed. My hand tightened around the glass. My breath caught in my throat. I tried to inhale, but the air would not come. The room tilted. The music became distant, muffled, like I was hearing it from underwater. I felt my knees weaken. I tried to steady myself against the bar, but my legs would not hold. The glass slipped from my hand. I heard it shatter against the floor, but the sound felt far away. People turned toward me. I saw their mouths moving, but I could not hear the words. Someone grabbed my arm. Someone else shouted. Their faces blurred. The lights above me spun. My chest burned. My heart pounded once, twice, then stopped. I collapsed. My body hit the floor hard, but I did not feel it. I was falling, but not the way you fall when you trip. I was falling inside myself. The noise of the party faded into silence. The lights dimmed. And then, I was above it all. I could see everything. My body lying on the floor. People are crowding around me. A woman kneeling beside me, her hand on my shoulder, shaking me. A man on his phone, yelling into it. Another person pushed through the crowd, shouting something about calling 911. I watched it all from above, weightless, detached, like I was floating in water. I tried to speak. I tried to reach down and touch my own chest to tell them I was still here. But my hand passed through everything, through the air, through them, through myself. I was there, but I was not. Paramedics arrived. I do not know how much time has passed. They rushed in with equipment, their voices sharp and urgent. One of them dropped to his knees beside my body and started chest compressions. Another tore open my shirt and placed pads on my chest. I heard the machine whine, charging, then a jolt. My body jerked on the floor. Nothing. Another jolt. Still nothing. I watched them work. I watched the clock on the wall. 11:52 p.m. Then 11:55 p.m. The countdown had started on the TV screens. The crowd had moved to the side, watching in horror, some with their hands over their mouths. 10:08. The paramedics kept working. Chest compressions. Another shock. Someone checked for a pulse. I saw him shake his head. 7:65. One of the paramedics looked at his watch and said something to the other. I could not hear the words, but I saw the look on his face. The look that said, "He is gone." 4, 3, 2, 1. Happy New Year. Fireworks exploded on the screens. Confetti fell from the ceiling. People cheered. Strangers kissed. Glasses clinked. The new year had arrived, but I was not there to see it. My body lay still on the floor, covered with a white sheet someone had draped over me. The paramedics stood. One of them wrote something on a clipboard. The other radioed in. I heard the time. 11:58 p.m. December 31st, 2023. I had died 2 minutes before the new year. And as the celebration continued above me, as people toasted to fresh starts and new beginnings, I felt something pulling me. Not upward, downward. A force I could not resist. The warmth of the room faded. The music disappeared. The lights went out, and the pull became stronger. I was leaving, but I was not going home. The room vanished. The sounds of the party, the fireworks, the laughter, all of it disappeared in an instant. I was surrounded by darkness. Not the kind of darkness you see when you close your eyes at night. This was different. This was heavy, thick, alive. It pressed against me from all sides like I was being swallowed. I tried to fight it. I tried to pull myself back toward the light, toward the noise, toward anything familiar. But I could not move. I could not control where I was going. I was falling. No, not falling. Being pulled. There's a difference. Falling means you let go. Being pulled means something has you. And whatever had me was stronger than anything I had ever felt. My chest tightened, even though I no longer had a physical body. My breath shortened, even though I was not breathing. Fear crept into every part of me, cold and suffocating. Then I heard it. A scream. Faint. Distant. Like it was coming from miles away. Then another. And another. They did not grow louder. They just existed. Endless. Trapped. I wanted to cover my ears, but I had no hands to lift. The screams surrounded me, echoing from every direction, never stopping, never fading. I tried to call out, to ask where I was, but no sound came from my mouth. The pull intensified. I was moving faster now, descending through the darkness like I was being dragged underwater. Shadows moved around me, shifting without source, without shape. They were not still. They were not empty. They moved like smoke taking form, watching, waiting. My heart, or whatever was left of it, pounded in my chest. Panic rose in my throat. Heat began to rise from below. Not all at once. Slowly, steadily, like standing too close to an oven that had been left open. It started as warmth, uncomfortable but bearable. Then it grew. Hotter, sharper. The air became thick, hard to breathe, even though I knew I was not breathing. It felt like trying to inhale through a cloth soaked in smoke. My throat burned. My lungs ached. But I could not stop. I could not turn back. The descent slowed. The pulling eased. And then I stopped. I landed on something solid. My feet touched ground, though I did not remember having feet. The surface beneath me was cracked, scorched, radiating heat that made my skin feel like it was blistering. I looked down. The ground was black and red, like stone that had been burned for centuries. Smoke rose in thin, slow waves, curling upward and disappearing into the darkness above. I tried to step back, but there was nowhere to go. I looked around. The darkness stretched endlessly in every direction, but it was not empty. There were shapes, silhouettes, faint outlines of people standing motionless in the distance, like statues frozen in time. I could not see their faces. I could not hear their voices, but I felt them. I felt their despair, their regret, It hung in the air like a weight pressing down on my chest. The screams continued, some close, some far. None of them ever stopped. They blended together into a sound that was not quite human, not quite anything. It was the sound of hopelessness, the sound of eternity without end. And it terrified me. I tried to speak. I tried to ask where I was, what was happening, why I was here. But the words would not come. My voice was gone. My body felt present but wrong, like I was wearing a shell that did not fit. I raised my hands and looked at them. They were mine, but they were not. They looked faded, transparent, like I was barely here. Then I felt it, a presence, not visible, not audible, but undeniable. It was behind me, watching, waiting. I did not want to turn around. Every instinct I had screamed at me not to look, but I could not stop myself. Slowly, I turned my head. The darkness moved. It shifted, rippled, like a curtain being pulled back. And from within it, something stepped forward. Not a person, not a demon, a presence, a weight, an authority that made my knees weak. I cannot see a face. I cannot see a form, but I felt it. I felt the power radiating from it. And I knew, deep in whatever was left of my soul, that this was not a place I was meant to be. A whisper filled my mind, not spoken, not heard, but planted, like a thought that was not my own. This is where truth begins. I opened my mouth to respond, to argue, to plead. But no sound came. The presence remained. The heat intensified. The shadows closed in. And I realized, with a terror I had never known before, that I was not waking up from this. This was not a dream. This was not a nightmare I could escape by opening my eyes. I was here, and I did not know if I would ever leave. The ground beneath me trembled. The air thickened. The screams grew heavier, pressing into my chest like invisible hands. I wanted to run. I wanted to disappear. But there was nowhere to go, nowhere to hide. I was trapped in a place I'd spent my entire life ignoring, a place I told myself did not matter, a place I thought I had time to avoid. But time had run out, and I was standing in the consequence of every delayed decision, every ignored conviction, every year I told myself I would change later. I fell to my knees, not because I wanted to, because my legs could no longer hold me. And as I knelt there on that scorched ground, surrounded by darkness and despair, one thought echoed in my mind louder than the screams around me. I was not ready. Those 3 words echoed in my mind, louder than the screams around me, heavier than the heat pressing against my chest. I knelt there on that scorched ground, hands flat against stone that burned but never consumed, and I felt something I had never truly felt in my entire life. Not fear of failure, not fear of loss, but fear of finality. The kind of fear that comes when you realize there are no second chances, no do-overs, no next year. The ground beneath me was not just hot. It radiated something worse than heat. It radiated despair. Like the stone itself had absorbed the suffering of everyone who had ever knelt here, and now it was releasing it back in waves. I tried to stand, but my legs would not move. I tried to lift my head, but the weight pressing down on me was too much. It was not physical weight. It was spiritual. It was the crushing realization that I had spent my entire life running from this moment, and now there was nowhere left to run. I looked around. The darkness stretched endlessly in every direction, but it was not empty. There were figures, hundreds of them, maybe thousands. They stood motionless, scattered across the landscape like statues in a graveyard. I could not see their faces clearly, but I could feel them. I could feel their regret, their hopelessness. It hung in the air like smoke, thick and suffocating. None of them moved toward each other. None of them reached out. They were alone, completely alone. And I realized with a sickening clarity that loneliness here was not just an emotion. It was a state of being. It was eternal. The screams continued. But now I understood them. They were not random cries of pain. They were personal, individual. Each one was a soul reliving the moment they lost everything. The moment they realized they had waited too long. I heard a man's voice somewhere to my left, broken and desperate, repeating the same words over and over. I was going to change. I was going to change. But the words had no power here. They were just echoes of a life that no longer existed. I try to remember how I got here. I remember the party, the champagne, the countdown, the pain in my chest, my body on the floor. But everything after that felt fractured, like pieces of a puzzle I could not put together. I wanted to believe this was a nightmare. I wanted to wake up in a hospital bed with doctors standing over me, telling me I was lucky to be alive. But deep down I knew this was not a dream. This was not a mistake. This was real. The air smelled wrong. Not like sulfur or smoke, though both were present. It smelled like regret, like opportunities that had rotted, like promises that had been buried alive. I had never smelled anything like it, and yet somehow I recognized it. It was the smell of every moment I ignored conviction. Every time I heard the voice of God and said, "Not now." Every New Year's resolution I made and broke. It was all here, tangible, inescapable. I noticed something else. There was no sense of time here. No clocks, no countdowns, no next year. Time had stopped, but existence had not. It was the worst kind of eternity. The kind where you are fully aware, fully conscious, but completely powerless to change anything. I thought about all the times I said, "I have time." I thought about all the years I wasted believing tomorrow was guaranteed. And I realized with a horror that made my chest tighten, there was no tomorrow here. There was only now, forever. My mind raced, searching for answers, searching for a way out. How did I get here? I whispered, though my voice barely made sound. I was not that bad. I went to church. I prayed sometimes. I believed in God. But even as I said the words, they felt hollow, empty, because belief without surrender is just knowledge. And knowledge does not save anyone. The silence between the screams was worse than the screams themselves. In the silence, I could hear my own thoughts. I could hear every excuse I ever made. Every time I said, "I will start next month." Every time I ignored my mother's prayers. Every time I felt conviction and pushed it away because I was too busy, too tired, too distracted. The silence forced me to confront what I had spent my entire life avoiding. I was not here because of one mistake. I was here because of 1,000 small choices. Choices to delay. Choices to ignore. Choices to put God last. I felt the weight of every decision I had ever delayed. Every time I said, "I will pray more next year." Every time I promised myself I would read the Bible and never did. Every time I felt the pull of the Holy Spirit and turned away because it was inconvenient. It was all here, pressing down on me, suffocating me, and I could not escape it. Then, without warning, the atmosphere shifted. The shadows that had been closing in on me pulled back slightly, as if something was pushing them away. The oppressive weight lifted just enough for me to breathe. I looked up, my vision blurred with tears that would not fall, and I felt it, a presence, not visible, not audible, but undeniable. It was beside me. I did not see a face. I did not see a form, but I felt authority, holiness, truth, the kind of presence that makes you realize how small you are, how broken you are, how far you have fallen. And yet, there was no anger in it. There was sorrow, grief, like this presence had been watching me my entire life, calling me, reaching for me, and I had ignored it over and over again. A voice spoke, not to my ears, not out loud, but directly into my soul, bypassing every defense I had ever built, every excuse I had ever crafted. "You treated eternity like a deadline you could negotiate." The words hit me like a physical blow. I wanted to respond. I wanted to explain. I wanted to say I was going to change. I just needed more time. But the words died in my throat because I knew they were lies. I had time. I had years. I wasted them. The voice continued, steady, sorrowful, undeniable. "I do not operate on your calendar." I felt my chest tighten. My hands trembled. I wanted to argue, to justify myself, to say something, anything that would make this stop. But I could not, because the truth was standing in front of me, and I had no defense against it. The presence did not shout. It did not condemn with rage. It simply revealed. It showed me what I had refused to see my entire life. That God was not waiting for me to get my life together. He was not waiting for me to finish my career, my goals, my plans. He was calling me now. He had been calling me all along. and I ignored him because I thought I had time. The voice spoke again, and this time the words shattered me. Millions fall into this place, not because they rejected me completely, but because they delayed me repeatedly. I fell forward, my forehead touching the burning ground, and I wept. Not with tears, because there was no relief here, but with a brokenness I had never known. I thought of all the people I knew who were just like me. Good people, respectable people, people who believed in God, but never truly surrendered. People who said, next year, until there was no next year. And I realized they were all headed here, unless someone warned them. The presence remained beside me, silent now, waiting. I wanted to speak. I wanted to beg for mercy. But what could I say? I had no excuse, no defense. I had been given every opportunity, every warning, every chance, and I wasted them all. Then the voice spoke one more time, and these words carried a weight I will never forget. Look, and see what you refuse to believe. The darkness shifted. The ground beneath me trembled, and the veil that had been covering my eyes my entire life was torn away. I was about to see something I was never meant to see, something that would change me forever. The darkness did not disappear. It transformed. The oppressive weight lifted slightly, just enough for me to raise my head, and what I saw made my breath catch in my throat. The shadows pulled back like curtains being drawn, revealing a massive cavern that stretched farther than my eyes could see. It was not a cave. It was a realm, a place, and it was filled with people. Thousands of them. Millions. I cannot count. They stood motionless, scattered across the scorched landscape like trees in a dead forest. They were not burning. They were not screaming. They were frozen, trapped, each one locked in place, as if time had stopped for them the moment they arrived. And I realized with a sickening clarity that this was not punishment by fire. This was punishment by memory, by regret, by the unbearable weight of knowing you had a chance and you wasted it. I forced myself to stand, my legs shaking, my body weak. I walked toward the nearest figure, a man standing with his head bowed, his hands clutched around something I could not see at first. As I got closer, I saw what he was holding. A calendar. The pages were yellowed and torn, but one date was circled in red ink. The words "next year" were written beside it in handwriting that looked hurried, desperate. The man's mouth was open, frozen mid-sentence, as if he had been about to speak but never got the chance. I stared at him, unable to look away. His eyes were open but empty. He was not looking at anything. He was just there, stuck. Reliving the moment, he realized he had run out of time. I wanted to reach out, to shake him, to tell him to move. But I knew it would not work. He was beyond reach, beyond help. He had made his choice, and now he was living in the consequence of it forever. I moved to the next figure. A woman kneeling on the ground, hands clasped together, lips moving in a silent prayer that would never be answered. I leaned closer and heard the faintest whisper, the same words repeated over and over like a broken record. I was going to start tomorrow. I was going to start tomorrow. But tomorrow never came. I stepped back, my chest tightening, my hands shaking. I looked around the cavern, and everywhere I turned I saw the same thing. People frozen in their regret. A young man holding a Bible, the pages still sealed shut, dust covering the leather. An older woman reaching toward a distant light, her fingers stretched as far as they could go, but the light was just beyond her grasp. A businessman in a suit, staring at his watch, as if he was still waiting for the right moment to make things right. They were not criminals. They were not murderers. They were not monsters. They were people like me, people who believed they had time, people who said next year, people who convinced themselves that God would wait. The voice spoke again, cutting through the silence like a blade. These are the souls who believed they had more time. I turned, searching for the source of the voice, but I saw nothing, only the presence, the weight of truth pressing down on me, forcing me to see what I had spent my entire life ignoring. This is the truth you refuse to see, the voice continued. Not everyone here rejected me. Most of them believed in me. But belief without surrender is not salvation. It is just knowledge. And knowledge does not save. I wanted to close my eyes, to look away, to escape. But I could not. The vision held me, forced me to see, and then, just when I thought I could not bear any longer, the scene shifted. I saw myself, not a reflection, not a memory. Myself, standing in the cavern, surrounded by the other souls, holding something in my hands. I walked toward myself, my heart pounding, my breath shallow. As I got closer, I saw what I was holding. A list, not written on paper. It was mental, but here in this place, thoughts became tangible. And this list contained everything I had promised to do when I was ready. Pray more consistently. Read the Bible daily. Forgive my father. Reconcile with my brother. Stop living a double life. Get serious about my faith. Every single item was crossed out, not with a check mark, not with completion, but with the word later written in bold letters. And beside each item was a year. 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023. Year after year, the same promises, the same delays. The voice spoke again, and this time the words cut deeper than anything I had ever felt. The new year you celebrated meant nothing, because your heart was never made new. I fell on my knees, staring at the list in my hands, and I saw it all. Every January 1st, I made resolutions about getting closer to God. Every February, those resolutions faded into the background of my busy life. Every December, I told myself, next year will be different. But it never was, because I never was. I saw the moments of conviction I ignored. The sermon that made my chest tighten, but I shook it off the moment I left the church. The friend who invited me to Bible study, but I said I was too busy. My mother's prayers over the phone every Sunday night, and I said, amen, but never changed. I heard her voice now, echoing in my mind. Baby, are you praying? Are you reading your Bible? Please do not wait. And I said, I will, Mama. I promise. But I never did. The voice spoke again, and these words broke me. You are not ready because you chose not to be. Not because you lacked time, but because you wasted it. I felt the weight of every ignored opportunity. Every moment, the Holy Spirit whispered to me, and I turned away. Every time God reached for me, and I said, not now. I saw my nephew, a young man who looked up to me, who asked me about God, and I brushed him off because I did not have answers. I barely knew God myself. I saw co-workers who were searching for truth, who asked me questions about faith, and I changed the subject because I was uncomfortable. I saw my mother on her knees every night, weeping, begging God to save her son. And I realized she knew. She saw what I refused to see. The vision expanded, and I saw my own heart. Not metaphorically, literally. I saw the condition of my soul. It was divided. One half facing toward light, the other toward darkness. The light side contained my intentions, my beliefs, my claims of faith. The dark side contained my actions, my priorities, my actual life. They did not match. The voice spoke one final time, and these words destroyed every defense I had left. You believed in me with your mind, but you did not surrender to me with your life. I saw every Sunday I skipped for brunch. Every prayer I rushed through while scrolling on my phone. Every Bible app notification I swiped away. Every moment I chose comfort over conviction. I saw myself lying in bed on Sunday mornings, telling myself I would go to church next week. I saw myself at work, laughing at jokes I knew dishonor God, staying silent when I should have spoken. I saw myself in relationships I knew were pulling me away from God, but I stayed because I was lonely. And then I saw the man I was becoming. Not better, not neutral, worse. Every delay was not just a pause. It was a step in the wrong direction. Every next year was not hope. It was pride disguised as patience. I fell forward, hands pressed against the scorched ground, and I screamed. Not out loud, but inside. A scream of realization. A scream of regret. A scream of terror. Because I understood now. If I had died any other year, I would have ended up here too. I was not a victim of bad timing. I was a prisoner of my own choices. If you're still here, thank you. Please subscribe if you want more testimonies like this. The voice spoke one last time, and these words carried a mercy I did not deserve. Go back and warn them. Tomorrow is not promised. I looked around the cavern one final time. I saw the souls frozen in regret, and I knew. This could have been me forever. The presence began to fade, but before it disappeared completely, it spoke. You will return, not because you deserve it, but because others need to hear. The ground beneath me began to crack. Light broke through the fissures, blinding and pure. The heat intensified for one unbearable moment, then suddenly stopped. The screams faded into silence, and I felt something I had not felt since I arrived. Hope. Then everything went white. The light did not come slowly. It tore through the darkness like a blade ripping through fabric. Blinding. Pure. Overwhelming. I felt myself being lifted, not gently, not like floating, but with violent force. Like something had grabbed me by the very core of my being and yanked me upward. The ground beneath me disappeared. The heat vanished. The screams faded into distant echoes, then into nothing. A hand reached through the light. I could not see it clearly at first, but I felt it. Strong, steady, real. The fingers wrapped around my wrist with a grip that was both firm and gentle, authoritative yet merciful. I tried to look up to see the face of whoever was pulling me, but the light was too bright. All I could see was the outline of a form and scars. Deep scars on the hand that held me. And I knew who it was. The voice spoke again, cutting through the chaos, clear and undeniable. Your time is not finished. I wanted to respond. I wanted to thank him. I wanted to beg for forgiveness. I wanted to ask why. Why me? Why was I being saved when so many others were left behind? But the ascent was too fast, too powerful. The words caught in my throat, and all I could do was hold on. You will warn them. Those words hit me like a command, like a mission I could not refuse. I was being pulled upward through dimensions I could not comprehend, through realms I was never meant to see. The darkness shattered around me like glass breaking, piece by piece, falling away into nothingness. The cavern disappeared. The souls frozen in regret vanished from view. The oppressive weight that had crushed my chest lifted, and for the first time since I died, I could breathe. But the ascent did not stop. I was moving faster now, rocketing upward at impossible speed. I felt the pull of my physical body, the tug of flesh and bone and life calling me back. It was not a gentle pull. It was magnetic, forceful, undeniable. And then, without warning, I crashed back into my body. Air exploded into my lungs with violent force. My chest heaved upward, gasping, choking, desperate. Pain flooded every nerve in my body, sharp and real and overwhelming. My eyes snapped open, vision blurred, colors bleeding together. White ceiling lights, beeping machines, the sterile smell of antiseptic. I could not focus. I could not think. All I could do was gasp for air like a drowning man breaking the surface of water. Voices erupted around me, shouting, urgent. He is back. He is back. Stay with us. Hands pressed on my chest, checking my pulse, adjusting equipment. A nurse leaned over me, her face close to mine, tears streaming down her cheeks. She was smiling and crying at the same time. Welcome back, she whispered, her voice breaking. You were gone. I tried to speak, but my throat was raw, my voice a broken rasp. My body felt heavy, like I was wearing lead. Every muscle ached. Every breath burned. But I was alive. I was back. I turned my head slightly, eyes scanning the room. Paramedics. Doctors. Machines. I was on a gurney in what looked like an emergency room. The fluorescent lights above me buzzed faintly. I looked at the clock on the wall. The numbers came into focus slowly. 12:09 a.m. January 1st, 2024. 9 minutes into the new year. I had been dead for 11 minutes. 11 minutes that felt like an eternity. A doctor stepped forward, checking my vitals, his face calm, but his eyes betraying his shock. It is a miracle, he said to someone behind him. His heart just restarted on its own. We were about to call it. I closed my eyes, and the images flooded back. The cavern, the souls, the flames, the voice, the warning. I gripped the side of the gurney, my hands shaking uncontrollably. My chest tightened, not from pain, but from the weight of what I'd seen. what I had been shown, what I had been sent back to do. The doctor leaned closer, his voice gentle. Can you hear me? Do you know where you are? I nodded weakly, but inside I was screaming, because I knew where I was. And more importantly, I knew where I had been. I knew what was waiting for millions of people who thought they had more time. People who were living exactly the way I had lived. People who were delaying exactly the way I had delayed. And I knew I could not stay silent. Not after what I saw. Not after what I was told. The nurse placed a hand on my shoulder, her touch warm and reassuring. You are going to be okay, she said softly. You're going to be okay. But I was not sure she understood. I was alive, yes. But I was not okay. I would never be okay again. Not in the way I used to be. Because the man who collapsed on that dance floor at 11:47 p.m. on New Year's Eve was gone. He died. And the man who came back was someone else entirely. Someone who had seen the other side. Someone who had been given a second chance that most people never get. Someone who had been commanded to warn them. I stayed in the hospital for 5 days. Physically, I was recovering. My heart was stable. My vitals were normal. The doctors called it a miracle. They ran tests, asked questions, but they had no medical explanation for what happened. My heart had stopped for 11 minutes. No oxygen to the brain. No pulse. No life. And then, suddenly, it restarted. No defibrillator. No medicación. Just life. But while my body was healing, my mind was unraveling. I could not sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the cavern. I saw the souls. I heard the screams. I heard the voice. Warn them. Over and over. Warn them. It echoed in my mind like a drumbeat I could not silence. I would wake up in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, gasping for air, gripping the hospital bed sheets like they were the only thing keeping me tethered to reality. On the third day, I called my mother. My hand shook as I dialed her number. She answered on the first ring, her voice tight with worry. Darius? Baby, is that you? I could barely speak. My throat tightened, and tears I had been holding back for days finally broke free. Manga. I died. There was silence on the other end. Then I heard her sob. Deep, guttural sobs that only a mother can cry. I know, baby. I know. They called me. But God brought you back. He is not done with you. I told her everything. The party. The collapse. The darkness. The cavern. The souls. The voice. The warning. She listened without interrupting, and when I finished, she prayed over the phone. Not a short prayer. A long, powerful, spirit-filled prayer that shook something loose in my chest. And when she finished, she said something I will never forget. You have been given a second chance, Darius. Do not waste it. Tell them. Tell everybody. I was discharged on January 5th. I walked out of that hospital a different man. My coworkers called, asking when I would be back to work. I told them I was not coming back. They thought I had lost my mind. Maybe I had, but I could not go back to that life. I could not sit in meetings and talk about marketing strategies and quarterly projections when I had just seen eternity, when I had just been shown what happens to people who delay. Within 2 weeks, I quit my job. I sold my Audi. I downsized my condo. People thought I was crazy. My friends stopped calling. But I did not care. I could not care. Because every time I thought about going back to normal, I saw their faces. The souls in the cavern. The man with the calendar. The woman whispered, I was going to start tomorrow. And I knew I could not be silent. I started small. I reached out to my pastor and asked if I could share my testimony at church. He agreed, though I could tell he was skeptical. On the first Sunday I spoke, my hand shook so badly I could barely hold a microphone. My voice cracked. I cried halfway through, but I told them everything. And when I finished, the silence in that church was deafening. Then people started coming forward, crying, repenting, surrendering. One woman, maybe in her 50s, grabbed my hand after the service, tears streaming down her face. I have been saying I would get right with God for 10 years, she whispered. 10 years. Thank you. Thank you for telling me the truth. That was the first time I realized the weight of what I had been sent back to do. This was not just my story. This was a warning for everyone who thought they had more time. I started visiting other churches, shelters, rehab centers, prisons, anywhere people would listen. I did not have a platform. I did not have a big following. I just had a testimony and a mission. And slowly, people started reaching out. Messages came through social media, emails, phone calls, people I had never met telling me they had been living the exact same way I had, delaying, procrastinating, making promises to God they never kept. One man wrote to me from Texas. He said he had been planning to get baptized for 3 years, but kept putting it off. After hearing my testimony, he got baptized that same week. A young woman from California told me she had been living with her boyfriend, knowing it was wrong, but convincing herself she would deal with it later. She moved out the next day. A father in Atlanta reached out and said he'd been ignoring his kids, chasing money and success, telling himself he would be a better father next year. He quit his second job and started coaching his son's basketball team. The stories kept coming. And every single one reminded me why I was sent back. Because people do not realize how close they are to eternity. They do not realize that next year is not promised. They think they have time, just like I did. I reconciled with my brother. We had not spoken in 5 years over something so stupid I could not even remember what started the fight. I called him, apologized, and we cried together on the phone for 20 minutes. I forgave my father for wounds I had carried for decades. Wounds I thought I would take to my grave. But I realized unforgiveness was one of the chains I saw in that place. And I refused to carry it anymore. I deleted every distraction. Social media apps that ate hours of my day. Streaming services that kept me up late when I should have been praying. I got rid of everything that pulled me away from God. And I replaced it with scripture, with prayer, with worship. Not because I was trying to earn my salvation, but because I had tasted death and I never wanted to go back unprepared. Every morning I wake up now, I thank God, not with empty words, with real gratitude, because I know what it feels like to have your time run out. I know what it feels like to stand before eternity and realize you are not ready. And every night before I sleep, I pray for the people who do not know, the people who are living the way I used to live, the people who think they have tomorrow. The moral of my story is not complicated. It is painfully simple. Procrastination in spiritual matters is not harmless. It is deadly. Every time you say, I will pray more next month, you are gambling with eternity. Every time you ignore conviction because you are busy, you are building a life that looks successful on the outside, but is empty on the inside. And when your time comes, and it will come, none of that will matter. Not your job, not your car, not your reputation. The only thing that will matter is whether you surrendered your life to God or kept telling him to wait. I learned that hell is not just a place for murderers and monsters. It is a place for people who delayed, people who believed but never surrendered, people who said, next year, until they ran out of years. And the tragedy is that most of them did not reject God. They just kept putting him off. They treated eternity like a deadline they could negotiate, and they lost everything. But I also learned that God is merciful. He gave me a second chance I did not deserve. He pulled me out of that place when I should have stayed. And he did it for one reason. So I could warn you. So I could tell you the truth that so many people refuse to believe. Tomorrow is not promised. Next year is not guaranteed. The midnight countdown means nothing if your soul is not ready to meet God at any moment. If you are hearing this right now, it is not an accident. Maybe you have been delaying. Maybe you have been making promises to God you never kept. Maybe you have been living a double life, looking good on the outside but hollow on the inside. Maybe you keep saying, I will change after this, after that, after the new year. Stop. Stop right now. Because you do not know if you will see tomorrow. You do not know if you will get another chance. Examine your heart today. Not next week. Not next month. Today. Stop saying next year. Stop procrastinating with your soul. God is not on your calendar. Eternity does not wait for your timeline. Turn back while you still can. Repent. Surrender. Choose life. Because I promise you, hell is real, and it is filled with people who thought they had more time. Do not let your next year be never. Tell me where you are watching from in the comments. I want to pray for you tonight. I do not know how much time any of us have left, but I know this. God is calling you right now. Do not ignore him. And if this testimony reached you, stay connected. There are more warnings people need to hear. Thank you for listening. Subscribe and watch the next testimony on your screen.